Welcome back, everyone. It's the lawyer you know. We're giving you our first trial update on the Kleiman v. Wright trial centered around Bitcoin and who started this whole thing. Who is Satoshi? Will we get that answer in this trial about 1.1 million Bitcoin and who it actually belongs to? A lot of stuff has happened this first week, but we're going to go through step by step what's happening in this trial, what some of the witnesses are saying, because more than one witness has testified that they think a certain person involved in this trial is Satoshi. So we'll get to that and more. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in this case and this content specifically, make sure you like this video so we know to bring more updates as the trial continues. They think this trial is going to be resolved and done by Thanksgiving, so we've got a couple weeks of content here if you all are interested in it. If you're interested more generally in court cases and things going on in the news and what your rights are and you want to hear it explained from a lawyer personally, make sure you subscribe to our page so you can get notified and understand all of our videos that are coming in the future. So in this trial, it started like any other trial with jury selection. And jury selection included lots of questions dealing with cryptocurrency and digital currency, and most of these potential jurors had no clue anything about it, even the most basic things with Bitcoin, which I would probably be included in that group. But what I thought was really interesting was out of the 10-person jury they selected, 7 women and 3 men, average age in their 50s, 9 of them have invested in some sort of digital currency. So they've at least dipped their toe in the water or know something about it, while none of them are experts by any means, and the basics of Bitcoin are going to have to be explained to them. So what happens first in a trial? Hopefully you know by now if you've been following our channel. That is opening statements. After the judge reads the jury instructions, lets the jury know what's going to happen, swears the jury in, sits them down. It's time for the real action to start. And many people in the courtroom are describing this as a Hollywood drama or a Hollywood production put on by these lawyers. First, the plaintiff's lawyer gets up and is very fiery and says things like, this man was stealing from his dead best friend and he's a fraud and we're going to prove it to you that he stole these Bitcoin from his best friend. Then the defense lawyer gets up and they're a lot calmer and a lot more matter of fact about how Craig Wright, the defendant's done a lot of things. He's not some fraud. He's not some guy that can't figure this stuff out. He's actually the guy. And Dave Kleiman was one of his very good friends, but not his partner and not entitled to any of his Bitcoin. So that sets the stage kind of for what's going to happen in this case. And as I said, the jury is not filled with experts on this cryptocurrency, on this Bitcoin stuff. And the first witness was Andrea Antonopoulos, a good Greek boy, who is the plaintiff's expert on all things Bitcoin and digital currency. He was brought on by the plaintiff to explain to this jury who's not filled with experts on Bitcoin what it is, how it's mined, how it works. They say he's the most cited expert in Bitcoin. He's authored all sorts of articles and books and things about Bitcoin, and he charges $500 to $750 an hour to consult on this type of stuff. But what was much more interesting was the cross. The plaintiff is paying him $750 an hour to be their expert, which is a lot. We pay experts a lot of money in trials. $750 an hour is a lot. Trust me on that one. And they knock his expertise, right? He's supposed to be an expert on this, but they ask him, have you ever mined Bitcoin before? No. Are you a trained economist? No. Do you have any training in economics at all? No. And lastly, the most important question of the trial, do you know who this 1.1 million Bitcoins belongs to and whether or not there was a partnership between Dave Kleiman and Craig Wright? No, he has no knowledge on any of that. So I think they did a good job in just kind of brushing him aside. You know, he's not even that big of an expert. He's never mined it before, so does he even know how this whole thing happened and if it was mined, where it went and who got it and who's entitled to it? Does he know if they have a partnership? No. So they did a good job in diffusing this witness. And lastly, he said he doesn't even know who Satoshi is. So what do we care what this witness has to say, right? All right, let's get the next witness. Patrick Page. There was an email for Patrick Page that reads, Dave and I had a project in the US. He ran it there. We kept what we did secret. The company we ran there mined Bitcoin. And that was an email from Dr. Wright, the defendant, to Page, this witness. And that's going to be important later when we talk about whether Dave ever really talked about this to anybody. But this was a great swing for the plaintiff to show Dave and Wright, Dave Kleiman and Wright, and I'm calling him Dave because Ira Kleiman's his brother and he's the PR and technically the plaintiff in the case, but Dave Kleiman is who was the actual participant and partner, supposedly alleged partner of Craig Wright. So Through this email, it's clear they were working on things together. Dave was working in the United States. It involved Bitcoin and it was kept secret. I do think it was really great to make those points for the plaintiff. Now, Cross focused a lot more on partnerships. And this guy, Page, had a partnership with Dave. There was a written agreement. There was an LLC. There were rules on how things would proceed. Yet he said, was there ever that kind of deal with Dave and Craig Wright? No, I don't know. I don't know what writing's at. It doesn't seem like anything was ever in writing. It doesn't seem like there was an agreement or a partnership. And isn't it true that you, Mr. Page, actually sued Dave over something that happened with your LLC or one of your partnerships with him? And he said yes. So they made great points in the fact that if there was a real partnership, if you look at Dave's life, he makes partnership agreements. He makes LLCs with people to do business. So if a partnership existed with Wright, Dave Kleiman would have put something in writing, would have created an LLC, whatever it may be. You can create an LLC and it can still be secret, whatever it is that you're doing. You can create a partnership and not necessarily explain what it is you're doing. You can just say computer stuff or whatever. So, some good points as well from the defense with this witness. The next witness we're going to talk about is Gavin Anderson. And in conjunction with Mr. Page, who we just talked about, we have two witnesses who seem to indicate they think they know who Satoshi is, and they think it is none other than Craig Wright and others. They seem to think that it's a group of three people, that Dave and Craig did a lot of the heavy hitters, but that we are having the trial dealing with Satoshi. First in line, basically, to this Bitcoin, the one we've all tried to figure out who it is. These two witnesses seem to indicate they think Craig Wright, the defendant, is at the head of whatever group of people make up who Satoshi is. And the reason for that is Craig Wright was able to show certain things, do certain things, sign for certain things that only Satoshi would have been able to do, know, or sign for. He also says some of the things that happened in person that Craig may have shown him or done that made him believe he's Satoshi could have been fraudulent, which again to me seems speculative and I would have objected to speculation, but no hard proof yet, but we do have some evidence and some testimony that Craig Wright was at least the head of a group of people that make up Satoshi. So will that be confirmed? Let's keep digging in and see what else we can find. Jamie Wilson was the next one to take the stand. They're an accountant and they were director and CFO for some of Craig Wright's companies. And he came forward and basically said that Craig does have a large amount of Bitcoin. He's even told him he's had over 1 million Bitcoin. He told him Dave Kleiman, they were very good friends and he had helped him out. And he said that basically he testified that he thinks Craig has this stuff. If the jury finds in favor for the plaintiff, Craig Wright has it and will be able to pay off this judgment and will be able to access it. We'll see what happens. Now, on cross, the defense makes some great points. They make him seem like a disgruntled employee, somebody that's had bad dealings with Wright in the past, and maybe some litigation that's occurred with the defendant, Craig Wright, to make him biased against Craig Wright. This witness even reached out to the plaintiff to congratulate him when he filed suit against Craig Wright. Also not great. And he also agreed that he has no idea if Craig Wright purchased this Bitcoin, mined it with Dave, mined it with somebody else. He has no idea. So the Bitcoin that he says exists, he has no idea how it got there, where it is, or anything like that, anything specific. Which is not great for the plaintiff again in this case. And in our initial discussion and setting up this case and what we expected trial, we knew it was going to be hard for the plaintiff because Dave is no longer with us. Dave Kleiman cannot take the stand and explain all this happened. So it's all conjecture and speculation and hearsay and I saw this or saw that, to make it seem like something that it doesn't actually prove it is. Just because he saw that Craig Wright has 1 million Bitcoin, that doesn't mean he mined them with Dave Kleiman and they had a partnership and half of those belong to Dave Kleiman's estate. So I don't really know how powerful this was for the prosecution. Now this guy did call Craig Wright a fraud and all sorts of things like that while he was on the stand, which is one of the things the plaintiffs are trying to prove. But in order to get to the final straw, which, yeah, he's a fraud, nobody likes him, he doesn't do things the right way, therefore you can believe he forged these documents and stole from Dave. But we've got to get some evidence of that last part, not just that he's a fraud or people don't like him. We've got to show how it specifically deals with Dave Kleiman and these Bitcoin in question. Next up is Mr. Nguyen, who is the founding president of Bitcoin Association. They played a video recording of him saying that he believes Satoshi is Craig but that he had a lot of help and there was a group of people again. So now I think this is the third witness that has either outright said it or intimated that Craig Wright, the defendant in this case, is Satoshi, or is at least the head of the snake that is Satoshi. So we're starting to get more and more testimony, which is evidence on the record now that Craig Wright is Satoshi. The last witness we're going to talk about is Ira Kleiman himself, who is technically the plaintiff in this case, the brother of Dave Kleiman, personal representative of Dave Kleiman's estate, to talk about what he knows and some of the email correspondence with him and Mr. Wright after Dave died, where he questioned some of the signatures. And he questioned some of the decisions that Craig Wright said Dave Kleiman made, like signing over everything to Craig Wright, which is some of the most damning evidence. Because if nothing existed, no partnership existed, and no Bitcoin was split, why would Craig Wright have to create these documents where Dave Kleiman would sign anything over to him, right? That's good for the plaintiff, but again, I don't know if that's enough to actually prove it. It's circumstantial, it's secondhand kind of, but Ira Kleiman got up and did his best to basically explain that. During his direct examination, there was an email that was from Craig Wright to Ira Kleiman talking about Dave Kleiman, where he said, "We did partner." Those words in black and white, but doesn't say what they partnered with, what they partnered to do, whether or not it involved the 1.1 Bitcoin, and what that partnership was like. Was it 75-25? Was it 50-50? Was it 90-10? Again, it seems like straws. I don't want to say they're grasping at straws, but that's what it feels like so far in the trial. And again, on cross, Craig Wright's lawyers did a number on Ira Kleiman so far. It's actually, he's still on the stand being cross-examined. It's late Thursday, so when you're getting this update Friday morning, Ira Kleiman could be on the stand or he could be done. But at this point, they've done a great job to talk about the fact that there's no written agreement. That Dave Kleiman did in fact have a will that Ira Kleiman has reviewed, and that it does not mention Bitcoin. It does not mention a partnership with Craig Wright. It does not mention anything that Ira Kleiman would have a right to that Dave Kleiman had done that has any value at all. It also, that lot was brought out about Dave Kleiman's tax returns, about how he was basically destitute and how he never mentioned Bitcoin or anything like that. He never wrote off any purchasing of servers and computers and things you would need to mine Bitcoin, which is some of the stuff the plaintiffs have been arguing throughout the case. And he even admitted that never in Dave Kleiman's life did he ever mention to him Bitcoin, any of these companies, a partnership with Craig Wright, or his rightful ownership over half of these over 1 million Bitcoin. Never was that ever mentioned to Ira Kleiman. That is all important to me because if I'm sitting there and I'm a juror right now, I'm leaning pretty heavily towards the defense. You tell me what you think in the comments. Who are you leaning toward Kleiman or Wright at this point based on what you know? Because based on what I know so far, I don't think they're holding their burden to prove this case. I'm not saying I know what the truth is, right? We have to hold the plaintiff to their burden, and at this point, I don't think they're holding it up right now. Some other weird stuff with Ira Kleiman. He has over 30 email addresses with some strange names, and some of them he even identifies himself as Dave Kleiman. So it seems as if he's trying to get into this digital currency world, telling people he's Dave Kleiman to try to get information or try to maybe get Bitcoin from them or pretend to be part of this Satoshi group. And then lastly, he's not just suing Craig Wright, he's suing multiple other former best friends of his brother Dave Kleiman. And Craig Wright's lawyers are like, are you making a habit of suing all your dead brother's best friends? Because that's very strange. That's not something that would make me look kindly on Ira Kleiman. I don't know either of these people personally. I have not followed this case for years, as many of you have. So you may have strong feelings about Craig Wright or Ira Kleiman or Dave Kleiman. I don't. I'm just purely looking at what evidence is being presented at trial as a lawyer. That's why I like to hear from you guys, because you're the potential jurors on these cases. So let me know the way you're leaning right now. If you have anything to add or any questions you want me to hit next week, make sure you get them in the comments. As always, like the video if you're here for this comment and subscribe to our page if you want more of the same. That's all we've got for week 1 in the Kleiman v. Wright trial. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.